Hello and welcome to the 24th episode of Movie Week in Review. Today we are going to be discussing Dead Poet Society. I am TFG Mike, and as usual I'm joined by Steve Megatron. Hello.
Howdy.
How are you?
Doing great.
Yep. This episode will actually air the day after Christmas. It will air on Boxing Day. We're actually recording it on the 26th as well. So yeah, it's a good thing I already got the audio for all this stuff. It isn't much, but yeah, Christmas just passed. Had a good Christmas this year. Had a very late Christmas this year, actually. In Toycast episode 31, which just aired today, we had recorded that. Michael Wilson and I recorded that before Christmas, and my mom and I were running around, trying to figure out what we're going to do, and we eventually just got like a little 3-foot fake tree, but it has fiber optic lights, so that's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah, Christmas is over. Thank God we can get back to normal, or somewhat of a resemblance of normalcy. So how was your Christmas, sir?
Mine was pretty good. Got most of everything I wanted. I got new MP3 player, which is great.
What'd you get?
I got a Sony Walkman 4 gigabyte.
Oh, well.
It has 45 hours of battery life.
Oh, that's cool.
So I thought that was pretty neat.
Well, it beats having only 1 gig.
Yes, it does beat that, and the other one was falling apart. So this will be rather nice.
Yes. Yeah, I put up a couple of YouTube videos. I got the main two things really that I got, which I actually already knew I was getting them, because one of them my mom does not do online shopping, and she didn't want to go out to the stores, so I went on Amazon looking for a deal on the Justice League Complete Series set. After with gift wrap, it came to like $76 and change. So that's pretty good. I'm glad I got that. It allowed me and Lupus Convoy to start the Secret Origins podcast. That will actually be premiering in February. Actually, the episode 0 will probably be premiering in January, but I think the plan is we are going to debut that February 2nd, 2010. Holy crap, 2010. That's weird to say.
2010.
Yes. Yeah, it's just weird. I got a whole bunch of clothes, which I needed. I got some G1 Robot Heroes. I got the RC Frenzy 2-pack. All in all, it was pretty fun Christmas. We watched pretty much all the Christmas cartoons that we covered in Tooncast episode 30, the holiday show. I'd like to apologize to anyone who listens to that. The Rudolph clip is a little messed up. I fixed it the best I could. It just, I don't know. Blame the call recording software. So, do we have anything else we want to say before we actually get into the topic today?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
We'll be right back.
Gentlemen, what are the 4 pillars?
Tradition, honor, discipline, excellence. Banners up.
Welton Academy for Boys, a breeding ground for the future leaders of America. An institution dedicated to achievement, virtue, and conformity. A school whose rigid standards are upheld by every single teacher, except one.
Come on, Mr. Overstreet, you twerp. Mr. Anderson, are you a man or an amoeba? Language was developed for one endeavor, and that is...
To communicate.
No! To woo women. Mr. Keating?
Some people like to rock, some people like to roll, but moving and a groove is gonna satisfy my soul. Let's have a party.
Touchstone Pictures presents Robin Williams as John Keating, teacher.
Well, is this a dagger I see before me?
Philosopher.
I like Byron. I give him a 42, but I can't dance to it.
Orator.
Oh, Titus, bring your friend hither.
And founder of the Dead Poet Society.
A bunch of guys sitting around reading poetry.
No! Ding! Thank you for playing anyway.
What was the Dead Poets Society?
The Dead Poets were dedicated to sucking the marrow out of life. Spirits soared, women swooned, and gods were created. Not a bad way to spend an evening, eh?
I hereby reconvene the Dead Poets Society.
To strive, to seek, to find.
Gotta do more, gotta be more!
Dare to walk a new path. Dare to strike out and find new ground.
I'm hearing rumors, John, about some unorthodox teaching methods in your classroom.
Break out.
I'm gonna do it!
John Keating. He began by teaching English. Now, he's changing lives.
I got the part! Tear out the entire introduction.
Who put you up to it? Was it this new man, this, Mr. Keating?
Are we just playing around out here, or do we mean what we say?
Tradition, honor, discipline, rip, shred, tear.
What is this Dead Poets Society? I want names.
This is a battle, a war. The casualties could be your hearts and souls.
For the first time in my whole life, I know what I want to do.
Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits. Poetry, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
That's beautiful.
Sit down, Mr. Anderson.
Sit down. What the hell is going on here?
Seize the day.
Touchstone Pictures presents Robin Williams as John Keating. He was the inspiration that made their lives extraordinary. Dead Poets Society.
We are back, and the 24th episode, we are going to be talking about Dead Poets Society. Like I said, when I showed the schedule of episodes to someone, and they asked me, why would you have Dead Poets Society after the Christmas films and before the Batman film reviews? And I said, I don't know. I was just going off what I had in my DVD shelves and whatever. And honestly, Dead Poets Society for me is one of Robin Williams' best films. It is a 1989 film starring, as I said, Robin Williams and directed by Peter Weir. Set in 1959 at a conservative and aristocratic boys' prep school, it tells the story of an English teacher who inspires his students to change their lives of conformity through his teaching of poetry and literature. The movie is a modern interpretation of the Transcendentalist movement. The story is set in the Welton Academy in Vermont and was filmed at St. Andrew's School in Middleton, Delaware. The script, written by Tom Schulman, was based on his life at Montgomery Bell Academy, an all-boys preparatory school in Nashville, Tennessee. A novelization by Nancy H. Kleinbaum, based on the movie's script, has also been published. Did you ever see this film, or when was the first time that you did see it?
I think I'd first seen it, actually in 9th grade. They showed it, I don't even know why they showed it to us, but they showed it to us in school.
Did they show it to you in English?
No.
Really?
Yeah, it was in, I saw it in leadership class, which is the weirdest thing.
See, I would have thought that people would have shown it in English. In an English class or a writing class. I think I saw this in school. I don't remember. I might have. I honestly have no clue.
Yeah, that's when I saw it though.
Yeah. Which I think if we saw it in school, we probably saw an edited version of it. Because I seriously doubt that they would have shown the, at least in the schools that I went to. I went to public school, but I don't think they ever showed us the suicide scene. I don't know.
We saw that.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, but that's because our school, we lived in the ghetto, so we'd seen that on the news.
Yeah. Just my overall impressions of this, like I said in the intro, I think this is one of Robin Williams' best films. Just great thing, and especially me being a writer and writing poetry and getting it published and all that stuff. This is just an awesome film. So getting into the plot here, 7 boys: Neil Perry, Todd Anderson, Knox Overstreet, Charlie Dalton, Richard Cameron, Stephen Meeks, and Gerard Pitts attend the prestigious Welton Academy Prep School, which is based on 4 principles: tradition, honor, discipline, and excellence. Now, these characters are played by Robert Sean Leonard, Ethan Hawke, Josh Charles, Gail Henson, Dylan Kosman, and Alion Ruggiero, I don't even know how to say Meeks' real name, and James Waterston. I think this is one of the first things I ever saw Ethan Hawke in.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I didn't really know who any of these people are.
I didn't when I saw it then, but I knew after a few years, like Josh Charles, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, and I just couldn't put I knew his voice and I knew his face, but I just couldn't figure out where else I'd seen him. Actually, it's funny, now that I think about it, after I watched this, the other thing I saw him in, he was Brian in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
I haven't seen that movie in so long.
I love that movie.
I don't remember anything really about it. I've only seen it once.
He was the clown dog boyfriend. He was the boyfriend of the sister that... Anyway. So on the first day of class, the students are introduced to their overwhelming and extraordinary curriculum by Sullen headmaster Gail Nolan, played by Norman Lloyd. However, their new English teacher, John Keating, played by Robin Williams, tells the students that they may call him "Oh Captain, My Captain," the title of a Walt Whitman poem. If they feel daring, his first lesson is unorthodox by Welton standards, whistling the 1812 overture and taking them out of the classroom to focus on the idea of carpe diem, Latin for seize the day, by looking at the pictures of former Welton students and in a trophy case. In a later class, Keating has Neil read the introduction to the poetry textbook, a staid, dry essay entitled Understanding Poetry by the fictional academic Dr. J. Evans Pritchard, Ph.D., which describes how to place the quality of a poem on a scale and rate it with a number. Keating finds the idea of such mathematical literary criticism ridiculous, calling it excrement, and he encourages his pupils to rip the introductory essay out of their textbooks. After a brief reaction of disbelief, they do so gleefully as Keating congratulates them with the memorable line, "Begone, J. Evans Pritchard, Ph.D.," much to the surprise and disbelief of one of Keating's colleagues. He later has the students stand on his desk and a reminder to look at the world in a different way, just as Henry David Thoreau intended when he wrote, "The universe is wider than our views of it." What did you think of the whole opening first part of this?
I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, the whole difference in... I like it when you see like a teacher that's kind of out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a movie, or, you know, just because it's not anything you actually see in real life.
Right.
They're all kind of cookie cutter. This, you know, it's nice to see a teacher that just kind of has his own style and method, and you know, is able to inspire the students in a different way rather than, you know, the way that everybody doesn't really give a rip about.
Yeah, I mean, you know, thank God I was never alive back in that time period. I mean, I know this film was made in '89 and I was alive then, but if I was born in the 50s, if I was who I am now, I could never have. I would be so outside the box that it would just be off. No.
Yeah, I would have, you know, loved to have a teacher like this. I mean,
right, but I'm saying like the other part of it with the parents and the school administration and the other teachers, like, you know, you must do this, this, and this. You must become a doctor. You must become a lawyer. Blah blah blah.
I couldn't handle that kind of pressure.
You know, and while, you know, Keating even acknowledges that, hey, you know, those are all noble pursuits, but why not do something that you want to do? The rest of the movie is a process of awakening in which the boys in the audience discover that authority can and must always act as a guide, but the only place where one can find out one's true identity is within oneself. To that end, the boys secretly revive an old literary club of Keating had been a member, called the Dead Poets Society. Todd experiences a particular transformation when, out of severe episode of self-consciousness, he fails to complete a creative writing assignment and is subsequently taken through an exercise of uncharacteristic self-expression, realizing creative potential he truly possesses. One of the boys, Charlie Dalton, takes his new personal freedom too far and publishes a profane and unauthorized article in the school flyer. This article, Charlie states that he wants to have girls allowed at Welton. To amusement of the other boys, he fakes a phone call from God saying girls should be allowed at Welton. Dean Nolan paddles and interrogates Charlie about the others involved. Charlie says he acted alone. Speaking of the phone call from God, I believe God is calling us right, if I can find it right now.
Fulton Academy. Hello? Yes, he is. Just a moment. Mr. Nolan, it's for you. It's God. He says we should have girls at Welton. He starts walking around towards my left. Assume the position, Mr. Dalton. Beansy.
All right, John.
Mr. Keating.
Mr. Dalton. It was a pretty lame stunt you pulled today.
You're siding with Mr. Nolan? What about Carpe Diem and sucking all the marrow out of life?
Sucking the marrow out of life doesn't mean choking on the bone. See, there's a time for daring, and there's a time for caution. And a wise man understands which is called for.
But I thought you'd like that.
No. You being expelled from school is not daring to me, it's stupid. Because you'll miss some golden opportunities.
Yeah, like what?
Like, if nothing else, the opportunity to attend my classes. Got it, Ace?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Keep your head about you. That goes for the lot of you.
Yes, Captain. Yes, Captain.
Phone call from God. If it had been collect, it would have been daring.
I love that scene. And actually, it's funny, I actually had to combine the two scenes because when he does the phone call from God, it then goes to the whole interrogation thing and the paddling, and then after the paddling, Keating comes in. So, yeah. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm
okay,
still
I was
there.
going to say.
Yeah. No, I do like that scene. That is pretty funny.
Yep. Phone call from God. And if it had been collected, it had been daring.
But just plain no.
Yeah, no. Neil, without his father's permission, tries out for a local production of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. He desperately wants to be an actor, but knows his extremely strict father, played by Kurtwood Smith, will disapprove. One day, when Neil walks to his dorm room, he finds his father waiting for him. He orders Neil to withdraw from the play, but Neil goes against his wishes and delivers a sterling performance as Puck. The play, even though I love this film, in the scene of them doing the play, I kind of lost a little bit of interest. I don't know. I just didn't really.
Yeah, that doesn't keep my interest too much either.
I'm sorry to say that. I understand that Shakespeare was, one of the greatest playwrights and writers of our time, but I don't know. I just didn't like that scene. It's funny, Kurtwood Smith. Most of our audience, whoever does listen to this podcast, will know him as Red Foreman from that '70s show. He was oh yeah, that's right. He's in a whole bunch of other stuff. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I know he played a voice in Justice League, in the Justice League cartoon, as a lawyer. I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. I can't think of it at the moment. Infuriated by his affront to his authority, Neil's father plans to pull him out of Welton and to enroll him in Braden Military School to prepare him for Harvard University and a career in medicine. Unable to cope with the future that awaited him and equally unable to make his father understand his passion for acting, Neil commits suicide with his father's revolver. That scene is just eerie.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know, it's something shocking to see in a movie anyway.
Well, we don't even see the actual, I'm trying to remember.
You just can kind of, the act was committed.
Right. You don't actually see this, like, him shooting himself isn't on screen, but it's just the music and the fact that Mr. Perry wakes up because he hears a noise and he goes down and he sees Neil. He's like, "Oh my God, Neil!" And coupled with the music for that, it just was the most eeriest scene I've seen in a while. And and this is not a horror film, ladies and gentlemen. I don't, as everybody knows, I don't watch horror films, but this was just one of those, like, eerie, oh my God, what the hell type of scenes for me. Let's see. At the request of Neil's parents, Nolan holds an investigation due to the tragedy. Surprisingly, he solicits help from one of the students, Richard Cameron. When Charlie Dalton finds out that Cameron has not only squealed on them, but has also blamed Keating, he furiously attacks his former friend and is expelled from Welton. Neil's father takes no responsibility for his son's death and instead holds Keating responsible. In Nolan's office, Todd is forced to regretfully sign a written confession casting blame on his former teacher. It is implied that the other students who are still faithful to Keating were similarly forced. Keating is accused of inciting the boys to restart the Dead Poets Society and is fired, even though they recreated it themselves. Again, this is why I could never live back then. I just couldn't. This, oh God, this is just way too strict for me.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. This would be in my opinion, a pretty shitty lifestyle to be stuck into.
Yes, very much so.
I mean, as much as it'd be nice to be pretty much handed everything that you've got and given every opportunity, I'd rather do what I've done with my life currently than have it go in that direction, because there's actually much more pressure on what you have to actually accomplish in your life because you have such shitty parents.
Yes, exactly. Let's see here. In the film's dramatic conclusion, the boys return to English class following Keating's dismissal. The class is now being temporarily taught by Nolan, who has the boys read from the very Pritchard essay that they had ripped out of the start of the semester. As the lesson drones on, Keating enters the room to retrieve a few belongings. On his way out, Todd apologizes to Keating for having signed the confession, citing the force exercised by the Academy. Keating acknowledges this. Nolan sternly orders Todd to be quiet and demands that Keating leave at once. As he exits the door, Keating is startled to hear, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," being called out by Todd, who has stood on his desk and Keating as Keating had bid him to do earlier, demonstrating the new perspective Keating has taught him. Enraged, Nolan warns Todd to sit down immediately or face expulsion, only to be defied. Then, one after another, the members of the Dead Poets Society, except Cameron, climb onto their desks, the first exclaiming, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and the others silently but resolutely. As a form of salute, the furious Nolan is defeated. He cannot expel half the class without compromising the school's image. With it, his reputation. Keating is touched and thanks the boys. He then leaves Welton for good, satisfied that the life lessons he has imparted to them have left their marks. I will, before we go into a little bit more of the discussion on the ending, that will actually be the end of this episode. I will put that entire scene along with the ending theme. I love that theme that plays like right after the end of the film. That's just awesome.
Yeah, I this whole movie though, it's a pretty touching and one that makes you actually think.
Yep.
It's not one of those ones that you just kind of walk right into halfway through and because you won't understand anything.
Oh, exactly.
And yeah, it's I love the character of Keating though. In this, Robin Williams' performance is awesome.
Yes. Two of my favorite Robin Williams movies of the 80s are, I believe Good Morning Vietnam was done in the 80s.
Yeah, that was. That's I loved his when he does the radio and he just completely doesn't give a shit, does what he wants.
This, the Dead Poets Society and Good Morning Vietnam are two of my most favorite Robin Williams movies from the 1980s. Just great films. What did you think of the closing scene?
I'd have to say that it pretty much ended pretty well for everybody, even though Keating still had to walk away from the school.
Right. All right, well, we are going to take a little break. You're going to hear a behind-the-scenes featurette that is on the special edition Dead Poets Society DVD, Dead Poets, A Look Back. It features new interview footage with director Peter Weir, Ethan Hawke, Robert Sean Leonard, and many others. And we will be coming back and talking about some of the more inspirations and behind-the-scenes stuff. We'll be right back.
I have worked with the great ones, with Hitchcock, Chaplin, Wells, Jean Renoir, Scorsese, Peter Weir.
You know, I have a big crush on him still. He was a profound influence on my acting. And my approach to acting and, you know. And he seemed to really love what he was doing.
Peter, for all of us, became kind of a little folk hero. We were very young and very impressionable. And in many ways, he was the first kind of legit professional artist I'd ever met. And he, not dissimilarly to the way that Mr. Keating does in the movie, instilled us with visions of art about what cinema could be, what was possible.
From an actor's point of view, one wants two things from a director: a constant interest in one's performance and the preservation of the ego, of the actor's ego. Peter does that to a marvelous degree. And in addition, he is what I call a humanist.
He fought for all of us. He protected all of us. He inspired all of us. He trusted all of us.
And he really kind of instilled in us this passion and this feeling on the set that what we were doing was important.
He knows what he wants from a scene. He knows what he needs, I should say, from a scene, what he has to have. And then beyond that, he's looking to see what more he can get out of you. And that's... that, I think, is the best kind of director, because that, for an actor, because that encourages you to do more, to go beyond just what it is on the page and, you know, what it is he tells you he needs in the scene. You know, there are other directors that I've worked with, good directors. He tells you how he wants the scene played, you do it that way, you start to do things differently, and it's like, yeah, well, that's good, but let's go back to the other way. Or, yeah, let's hang on to that for later, and then later never comes. You know, they just want it the way they want it, and that's all.
I was doing this scene with Gail Hansen, and it's just the two of us. And we finish the scene, and nobody says cut. Peter doesn't say cut. The camera's rolling. And this has never happened to me before. And I just sat there, like, not knowing what to do. And then finally Peter comes in, and he's like, "You guys, you're actors. The camera's rolling. Do whatever you want. It's yours." That moment that the director says action, and you've done the scene, and it's rolling, it's yours. It's all yours. And it was one of the most wonderful gifts I've ever had from a director, because now for me, acting, like from action to cut, it's complete, you know, it's mine. It's safe. Nobody can touch it. And I love it intensely. So no matter what's going on, once the director says action to cut is this like Stephen Hawking moment of no time as we know it.
I'll tell you the moment when I think I may have really iced myself, or at least given myself a very good chance of getting the role, is I went in to meet with him on the Disney lot here in Los Angeles, and he said, "Is there anything about your character that you don't feel comfortable with, or you don't feel is consistent?" That was a scary moment, because I didn't want to criticize the script, or I didn't want to get it wrong, but I did have an impression of the final scene, because in the original version, all of the poets stand on their desks when Robin Williams leaves at the end. I said, I don't think my character would stand on the desk. I think it would be much more true to what the character is in the script if he's not allowed to get up, or he doesn't allow himself to get up and defy, you know, Norman Lloyd's character and stand on the desk in the classroom there. And Peter Weir said, "You're exactly right." Said, "I think you're right. I don't think you would either." And I went, "Great." And I walked out and I went, "Whew." I don't remember anything about Peter from that first meeting. I was so nervous. I remember that he was Australian, and that he talked funny. I hadn't met many Australians at that point in my life. And
I got a call back, and then I got another call back, and then finally I read for Peter Weir, and then Ethan and I read together for Peter Weir. And then there was a screen test. It was endless process.
I received a call that I would have to audition, and that the audition would be on tape. They would shoot it. They would shoot. It would be a test, what we used to call a test, and a scene from the script.
You have to know, I was 18 years old, and I thought that getting this part would save my life. I mean, I had instilled it with that kind of importance for myself, and there were, like 50 kids around, 50 18-year-old guys, all passing through, reading scenes, and it was incredibly nerve-wracking.
I didn't feel that I should have to audition or even test. I'd just come off St. Elsewhere, and I said they have 6 years of film if they want to look at it and make a decision from that. No, this had to be this test. Mr. Weir, the director, was not in Los Angeles. He was on location in Wilmington, Delaware, looking for locations. And the only way he could judge would be if you did this scene from the piece. So I thought about this while I was on the tennis court, which always gives me a certain receptivity. And I thought, well, I'm in a good mood. I won this match today. I'll audition. I'll do the test. It's lucky I won. If I hadn't won that match, we would not be sitting here talking about Dead Poets.
I had just started acting, and I had done some 2 NYU films. And the last one I did was with a director that was really mean. And it was March, and he wanted me to be baptized in a lake, fully submerged. And I yelled at him, and I showed up late, but in the end I did what he said. And so I had this really big fear about when I was really going to work with a real director. So I audition, and I get the part of Dead Poet Society, and I show up on the set. And I had met Peter Weir, obviously, because I auditioned, but I was terrified that he was going to be even meaner than the NYU directors. So we get ready to work, and he takes me aside, and he says, "Well, I just want you to know that you are far more interesting than any character anybody could write. So it's about, really making it real, and if anything doesn't seem right to you, just change it and let me know." And I was in shock.
He's a beautiful guy, and he was good to all of us, and that makes an experience like that go better. But I don't have any memories of him until we started rehearsing. It was amazing, really, that we were given as much time as we were to rehearse the film before we started shooting. We all showed up at the Ramada Inn, and it was all done in the Radisson Hotel. Delaware. Where were we in Delaware? Do you remember where we were in Delaware?
Newcastle.
No. It was in Newcastle. Yeah, I'll remember in a second. We all got to Wilmington, Delaware about 2 weeks before cameras started to roll.
I wouldn't have said 2 weeks. I would have said 1, but maybe it was 2 weeks. I don't recall how early we got there.
Anyway, we were there at the Ramada Inn, and maybe it wasn't a Ramada Inn. Well, if it wasn't a Ramada Inn, it was an awful lot like a Ramada Inn.
We were there to rehearse. We were there to get our hair cut.
We all got these real 50s hairstyles, which was devastating to me and my vanity. And
we were there to play soccer. We were there to mostly research.
Yeah, Peter had given us these giant books of what were the top films of the he kind of decided that it was like, I forget what years, but he kind of gave a 3-year parameter. And so he made us these mixtapes that had the top 20 songs of those 3 years.
What it was like to be in the 50s, what it was like to be a guy in the 50s, a young kid.
You know, you see these young people movies now, and they're all making peace signs, or they're, you know, doing hip-hop things, or whatever it is. He really wanted to start getting us divorced from any kind of behavioralism that was locked into the, you know, it was the late 80s, early 90s.
He even suggested that we that we like not use shampoo when we took our like when we bathe at night and stuff. He wanted us to like, you know, like use soap instead of shampoo, because back then that's what kids had to use.
Peter started having us write poetry in order to start waking up our minds and start opening us up to what we might discover through the course of the filming. And really, the thing that I remember being the most important part of the rehearsal process of that 2-week period was Peter wanted us to spend as much time together as we could, to get sick of each other, to get annoyed with each other, to really just be together. We really felt by the time shooting started that we had been to school together, in a sense. So that was the kind of environment that he was taking. I remember one of the big exercises he had us do is he pretended we would do this, we'd get together for these rehearsals, and he would pretend that he was the drama teacher and that we were putting on a Christmas play, and we all had to be in character. It was really kind of bizarre, but, you know, kind of your basic theater game stuff that he was doing with teenagers, trying to loosen us up and also to start making us feel safe, that we could contribute and that we wouldn't be ridiculed. And, you know, that's Peter's great gift is, you know, when you're working with him, he really makes you feel like you have something to offer him, which encourages people to give their best.
He was like the Pied Piper. They would do anything. They'd go anywhere with him. They just thought he was the greatest, which he was. And so he made a marvelous unit out of them, which made it marvelous to play with them, because you had these marvelous performances happening before you. And, you know, acting is give and take. It's talking and listening. And they were so good about that. So I found it very easy to do the headmaster. I enjoyed giving them a bad time.
Father. Neil?
There was concern that this character, Mr. Perry, really be the villain of the piece. I think that has to do with sort of setting up some rationale for the suicide, but in any case, they were quite concerned about that. And you know, I can understand that. But at the same time, I was bound and determined that the character be understandable, not likable, just understandable, because I felt that that was really the nut of what was going on certainly with their relationship. And a big part of the movie is that this is a man who loved his son and thought he was doing what was best from his own sort of twisted version of how to deal with a kid. He didn't do this out of, you know, maliciousness. He loved this boy. He just went about it all wrong. So, when we did the scene in the hallway then, I tried as much as possible to play it down, to sort of work on him a little bit more, instead of harassing him, to kind of like work on him, make him feel a little bit more guilty, you know, about what's this going to do to your mom, and, you know, and we've worked hard, and, you know, that kind of like wheedling him as opposed to just harassing him and being nasty. That night we went to Daly's and I saw the stuff from the previous day, which is in the hallway.
You know how much this means to your mother, don't you?
Yes, sir.
And I thought it really worked, and so did Peter. We thought it worked well. It kind of found that line between where, you know, where he's still on the kid, and yet at the same time he's not overbearing. I mean, he's overbearing, but I mean, you know, not too much. And it just, I went home and all I could think about was what we had shot that day, which was before that, chronologically. And I thought, you know, it's just, I shouldn't have done that, you know. I shouldn't have got as angry with him. I mean, I could have played the scene which would have fit much more in connection with the hallway. This happens a lot when you're doing films, you know, you second-guess your scenes later on. You go, man, if I had known that when I shot the scene before, it would have been so much better. But that's it, you know. So I went in the next day then, and I was off camera, of course, wardrobe and makeup, because they're shooting over my shoulder and all that. And so I was doing the scene, and I was doing the scene as I wanted to do it now. And we did a couple of rehearsals, and Peter came over and said, "No, you know, you're doing the scene differently." And I said, "Yes." And I was expecting him to say, "You've got to do it the way you did it yesterday." And he said, "Is that because of what you saw in the dailies?" I said, "Yeah." I said, and I explained why and what I thought. And he said, yeah, you're right. So I turned to the director of photography and said, "John, turn it around. We're going to reshoot Kurtwood stuff." Now this doesn't happen, you know. To just reshoot stuff because it's, you know, because there are nuances of acting that are better. I mean, it's, you know, time's money in movies. This is a couple hours worth of work. You got to relight the whole set from the other direction, turn the cameras around, you know. But he did it because it was right. We could have got away with it the way the scene was before, you know, but it was better this way. That's the way he was about everything. And that tells you so, you know, that gives you such a feeling about a director that, you know, you'd do anything for him.
Hey, what's going on?
Nothing. It's my birthday, and my parents have sent me the same gift they sent me the year before, and I remember I was supposed to have this monologue about where I said 428, and Bob was like, "What's 428?" And I said, "That's what all the chemicals in your body would be worth if you bottled them up and sold them raw." And that's what my father said I was worth. And we were doing, it was one of the things I used to audition for the scene, and we started shooting it. And you know, if Bob, I'm sure, would tell a story differently. I'm trying to remember it.
It didn't really work very well, the scene, and Peter came over and stopped shooting and said, "This isn't working. Cut. Let's stop. We need to rethink the scene. It's flat. It feels like a scene. It doesn't feel real. I don't believe it."
I remember saying to Peter, I said, "I just would never be this self-pitying in front of another guy my own age. I just would never do that." And he's like, "You're right. This is really corny."
So Ethan and I went off, and he said, "You guys, we're gonna do some notes for tomorrow. You guys think for an hour. Try to find some way to make this work."
So we went into the back hall, and we started coming up with ideas of how it could happen. I remember Hope, the script supervisor, this woman who chain smoked, seemed back there trying to write all the different ideas we had.
And we came back with that idea. I don't know if it was Ethan or me or what, but
Bobby came up with the idea that we should huck it off the roof of the That's the roof of the thing.
And he said, that's it. That is where the scene has to go.
I remember Bob and I in the van ride home afterwards, like, is he really going to put that in the movie? I mean, it was too much fun. I mean, to be sitting there with this really guy, and we were just making up these lines, and he was writing them down, and it was fun. And if you look very closely, I bet Bob wouldn't like to say it, the last moment of the scene is after Bob throws the thing. I forget what he says. "Oh my," or something like that.
Oh my!
It's a total David Letterman impression. I've always wanted to bust Bob on that. I did at the time, but.
So good night, and to you all. Give me your hands, if we be.
Peter needed to turn the cameras around on the audience and get reactions from the crowd. So he said, "Let's divide it into groups. The middle, the left, and the right. When I point to you, I want you to, start laughing or start reacting." And he took about 15 or 20 minutes with this audience where he was standing at the front of them and he was running his hands like this. He'd be like this, and they'd start laughing a little bit, and then he'd go down, and then he'd point back there, and those people would start laughing, and he'd point to both at the same time, and then by the end, he was like an orchestra leader, and he was playing this audience of 200 extras like an instrument, and he was running his hands like that, and the laughter would spread all across, and then he'd stop, and then he'd spread the laughter that way, and then he'd spread it all up, and then he'd bring it all down. and he got this crowd so engaged in what was going on, and I just thought it was a perfect illustration of how he directs with his actors. Is he's inspiring and he's evoking things from people, and you just felt like when he did turn his attention on you, you wanted to be alive for him.
There's a scene where I'm supposed to find out that Terry, Bob Leonard's character, killed himself. And in the script, as was written, this big scene in the bathroom where I shouted, it was his father, it was his father, it was his father, this big long monologue about it. As we was driving to the set, it starts to snow. And it's snowing in buckets. It's coming down really fast, these giant flakes of snow. And, I've been up all night. And as soon as I get to the set, Peter runs over in the snow, and he says to me, he says, now, you wouldn't run into the bathroom, would you? You'd run outside, wouldn't you? I mean, would you run outside? I think you'd run outside. And I was like, yeah, I'd run outside, sure, whatever.
John Seal, the cinematographer, said to Peter, he said the snow is letting up, and he said, we can only shoot this once, because we don't have time to cover the tracks, and even if we do, the snow is not going to cover our error. It looks like it's stopping, and Peter's just, without, a beat, said, it's okay, Ethan can do it in one take. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I do what in one take? Oh, we're going to shoot it outside now. And I remember Ethan telling me that story and, welling up with pride that Peter had no doubt that he could do it in one take.
Peter gets everybody hustling in the camera, how they're going to shoot it, and how they're going to get the snow, and everybody's now on full speed because, anybody when it's coming down this heavy, it's going to stop, right? That's what everybody's talking about it. So, and Peter's saying, okay, if we don't get it, we'll just go into the bathroom, and that's, but let's try. And so then he comes back to my dressing room, and he's like, do you want to rehearse this? Because we're only going to be able to do 1 or 2 takes. And I said that, I really didn't want to rehearse it. I told him I was a total mess and that I'd probably be better off not rehearsing it. But did he mind that I hate this speech that I'm supposed to say? I said, can I not say that speech? And Peter's like, oh, I love that speech. It's a great speech. And I was like, well, I think it's really on the nose, really on the nose. And Peter's like, all right, well, listen, you cannot say the speech, but I have to think that you said the speech. Right? And I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean?
Todd, it's okay, Todd. It's all right, Todd.
And he's got 2 cameras going, and I did the puking thing and kind of half did that speech. And, Father, Neil, dead, ah! And then I ran down the field, and he got it. And that was, that was pretty dramatic.
There's also a scene with Robin and I at the funeral.
Neil was a true gifted. Well, I want you to know, I hold you personally responsible for this.
When we shot that, Peter said he doubted that he was going to use it. In fact, first, he cut it, and then when we were shooting the funeral, he said, I was thinking about that scene. What do you think about it? And and Robin and I both went, I don't know, let's shoot it, and you can always not use it. So we just shot this little sequence. I went to the movie with a friend of mine and his family. And the father and the son had the kind of relationship that's in the movie. And at the end of the movie, the father was sobbing. And it changed his relationship with his son. It changed their lives, their relationship. That, to be a part of something like that, to be a part of something that can make people's lives better, that's something I can be really proud of. And we should all be proud of people who are connected with this film, that it can have that kind of impact on people. That's the best,
I remember telling the boys, treasure this experience, because working with a director like Peter is going to be rare in your life. They were young men then, it's 10 years ago, of course. You may have maybe 2 or 3 more experiences like this, if you're lucky, in your lifetime. And I meant that, and I said, so treasure every moment, because you will look back on it as a frame of reference.
And that film really opened up a lot of doors for me, not just professionally, but socially too. Like I met people that I would have never met as a result of that, and gone places that I would have never gone. Thank God that I did that movie, because I met so many just wonderful people as a result of it.
I'd love to use this as an opportunity to publicly thank Peter Weir for introducing me to the arts and introducing me to the church of my choice. And most people I meet on the street still think that movie's the best thing I ever did. 12 years ago. And that's cool with me.
Filming Dead Poets Society, to me, was life-changing. The release of it and its success was whatever it was, but filming it, actually making the film, is what lives in my heart, and it's still with me every day. It changed my life, and it certainly changed my career too, but more importantly, it changed my life. And Peter Weir tends to do that to people, I think. Even people who just see his films.
We are back. We're going to talk about the normal, things we talk about, like the cast and what we thought of them, and some of the sources and inspirations, and some of the production and stuff of the film. The inspiration for Robin Williams' character is University of Connecticut English professor Samuel F. Pickering, a former teacher of author Thomas Schulman at Montgomery Bell Academy in Nashville, Tennessee. Williams, however, partly based his portrayal of the character on the late John C. Campbell, Williams' history teacher at Detroit Country Day School. On the first day of class, it was customary for Campbell to dump the AP American History textbook in the trash and to commence lecturing, which would go back to the beginning scene of him having them ripped out the essay.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. The introductory essay, as I said, read from their poetry textbook near the beginning of the movie, is taken nearly word for word from Chapter 15 of Lawrence Perrine's Sound and Sense, an Introduction to Poetry, which is still occasionally used by AP English classes in the United States. Charlie Dalton writes his poem on the image of a centerfold. She is Elaine Reynolds, Miss October 1959 in Playboy magazine. In another reunion, the centerfold for Miss March 1959, Audrey Dotson, is seen briefly. Let's see what else. In one scene, bagpipe player stands on the docks in the middle of the night. The song played is The Fields of Atherny, an Irish ballad that tells the story of a man who stood up against the famine, and the Crown was arrested for it and dispatched to Botany Bay. This echoes the boys' actions. They stood up against the school and were punished even though they did it for the right reasons. The song was composed in the 1970s. That's kind of cool. Really quick, some of the casting notes that I have here. Bill Murray and Dustin Hoffman were considered for the role of John Keating.
I just couldn't see that.
No.
I could see probably Bill Murray before Dustin Hoffman, and then even then I still couldn't see who they...
They're both a stretch.
Yeah, they just couldn't pull this character off, I don't think. I mean, they could, but it wouldn't turn out as well as it did.
Every time that we do one of these review shows, whether it's Tooncast or M-Wire or whatever, I always like to point out who could have been the person in a certain role and how it would affect the film if they had been. And I think that this role was tailored to Robin Williams. I mean, yeah, most of us know him as the Mrs. Doubtfire or Genie from Aladdin, or some sort of comical standpoint. But the man can act. He can.
Oh yes.
Hell, look at even though I've never seen this movie, look at 1 Hour Photo, or what was the other one?
He's got another one where he's like a
God, yeah.
Final Flip.
Yeah, I can't think. It was 1 Hour Photo, and there was something else. He was in he played a pedophile, I believe, in one of the Law and Order Special Victims Unit seasons, and just he is one of the actors that has the most range out of all the actors that I've seen in my lifetime.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
He can do anything. I mean, and there are a lot of actors and actresses that can do anything, but he, for the roles that he's given and the roles that I've seen him in, he just excels at them. Let's see. Robin Williams stated during filming that he was really drawn to the character John Keating because Keating was the kind of teacher he wished that he had had in school.
I think everybody does.
Well, yeah. Going into the cast, and again, now I recognize a lot of these people. Then I didn't. Like Kurtwood Smith, who played Mr. Perry. Robert Sean Leonard, who played Neil, I've seen him in other stuff. I just can't put it on the top. I just can't remember at this moment what else he's been in. Of course, like I said earlier, this is probably the first thing I had ever seen an Ethan Hawke in. Josh Charles, Robin Williams, just an all-around great cast. As far as the reception, Dead Poets Society was generally well received. Critics generally praised the uplifting and moving message of the story, the depth of many of the characters, and Williams' performance. It has become a cult movie and often used by teachers to inspire their work of their students and even themselves, as we said earlier. Critic Gene Schalt of the Today Show stated that it was one of the most magnificent motion pictures I've seen. Other critics see it as a movie of two halves, the first being the more worthy. It has been nominated for several Academy Awards. It won for Best Screenplay, original for Tom Schulman. It's got BAFTA awards. It's got 2 of those won and 4 nominations. It's just got it won a David Donatello Award for Best Foreign Film. It was nominated for Golden Globes. Let's see. There is a soundtrack. I don't know if it's actually on iTunes or anything. I'm not really sure. But the song that I was talking about earlier that plays at the end is called Keating's Triumph, and that is one of the best songs, like instrumentals. One of the ones that I really love. Do you have any final thoughts on this one?
Definitely a must-watch, must-own.
Yeah,
this movie is friggin' awesome.
Yeah.
I know that we say that about like 90% of our movies that we review.
And we're only 24 episodes in.
But it's so true.
Oh yeah. It's just, it's just so much good about it. There really isn't anything that I can, like when I was watching some of the Christmas cartoons for the holiday show for Tooncast, there were certain things that I kind of picked out that I'm like, what the hell, that wouldn't happen or blah, blah, blah. But I mean, watching this, I tried watching it from a reviewer's point, but I just started enjoying it. And I just watched it for sheer enjoyment and to kind of remind myself about it before we did the recording. I think that we are going to close this out. Actually, we will actually be right back. You're going to hear some ads first, and then we will close it out. So we'll be right back.
Soon it will be a new year, a new decade, and that means a new Transformers Review podcast from the minds that brought you the TFG1 podcast and all things Transformers. Coming January 11th, 2010 is the Beast Unleashed podcast. This will feature Steve Megatron, Pecan Court Michael, and TFG1 Mike. 30 pulse-pounding, discussion-filled episodes covering both Beast Wars and Beast Machines. This is the first ever Beast Wars Review podcast. So unleash the beast in you. You can find us on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. The TFG1 podcast has 24 action-packed discussion episodes on the original Transformers cartoon. So if you're a fan of the 80s cartoon, we have all you need and more, as well as an interview with Stan Bush. You can find us on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Tune in. Toycast is all new as we have transformed and transcended from just being Transformers Toycast into Toycast. We'll talk about any toy line from any generation, even Rock'em Sock'em Robots. You can find us on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Start being a kid again and keep collecting those toys. Moo-ha-ha-ha-ha.
All right, we're back. So this is the closing. Thank you for joining us here on Movie Week in Review. There are several ways to get in contact with us, leave feedback for the show. The first is you can visit www.geekcastradio.com. Find all the other GCRN podcasts there. The second is you can stop by www.PredaconEmpire.com/Nexus. Those are our new forums. The third is you can leave the show feedback on iTunes. Please do this. We crave feedback. The fourth is you can visit www.earth-2.net. Over there, that's a great geek culture website. On their forums, you can find our threads into the self-promotion section. And the fifth is the email address, which is gcrnmwire@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. The show name there is GCRNMwire. Mine is TFG1Mike. And what is your Twitter?
SCP-21.
We now have a voicemail line. Call us and leave us your thoughts on each episode. Be sure to say what show you're leaving the message for and your name. The number is 502-265821. We hope you enjoyed this episode of M-Wire and that you'll join us next time when we may have a special guest, and we will be starting the first volume of the DC Spotlight with Batman 1989. For now, I am TFG1 Mike with
Steve Megatron Phillips.
And we thank you for listening. Until next time.
Captain, my captain.
Sit down, Mr. Anderson. You hear me? Sit down. Sit down. This is your final warning, Anderson. How dare you? You hear me?
Oh, Captain, my captain.
Mr. Overstreet, I warn you. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. All of you. I want you seated. Sit down. Leave, Mr. Keating. Thank you, boys.